Everybody, welcome. You are watching the 87th SongBike Guitar Q&A YouTube live stream. How are you? Hope you had a great week. I hope it's sunny where you are. We got a sunny day out here. A little bit cold, but not too cold. I don't know. It's almost, I don't want to say the S word, but it doesn't seem like winter anymore. It seems like the thing that comes after winter, maybe a little bit. Maybe you're getting signs of that too, where you are. I want to say a few hellos. Hello, Matt, first in the chat. Hello, Death, Kira, Cole, Hearted, Fasago, Gamer, Fox. Hello, Wingo. Hello, Scott, Randy, William Collier. How are you guys? I truly hope you had a chance to play the guitar this week. And if you didn't have a lot of time to play this week, I hope you got it in your hands right now, like I do. So today's show is going to be a little bit different. I just didn't have a lot of time to prepare for today's show. So I need you to ask more questions than maybe you might have asked typically. I just was not in control of my time today. And I don't want to wing it and have too much time where I'm, trying to find stuff. I have a few things to show you, but today's show might be a little bit shorter than usual. Of course, I'm here for your questions. So as long as the questions are coming in, I'm ready to rock and roll. We do not have a play along song this week. And believe me, I'm as disappointed, or maybe more disappointed than you are. I had a song in mind and it's so clear in my mind, but I can't sum it up in a nice, easy to read format the way I want to, the way we usually do, right? I throw a page up on the screen and we just play along and life is good. And the song I had in mind was, it's so close. We'll get to it. But I couldn't, once I started writing it out, I couldn't sum it up in one page. And you guys don't need 4 pages on the screen with lots of arrows and diagrams. And that's what I want to avoid, right? But by the time I came to that realization, it was time to begin today's show. So no play along song this week. I don't know, unless we get in the mood. I don't know, anything's possible, right? Anything's possible. So the number one reason I'm here anyways is for your questions. So please do ask a question. Want to ask a guitar teacher a question? I'm the guy. Put a few question marks in advance. That's how I know it's aimed at me. We do have a few things to talk about today. For instance, the new CEO, relatively new CEO of Guitar Center, Phil McKnight interviewed him. I'm a fan of Phil McKnight's podcast, the KYG, the Know Your Gear podcast. Well, I'm going to put a link in the description of this video in a link to Phil's video of him interviewing the CEO of Guitar Center, who, of course, is a guitar player, which I don't take that for granted, but it's nice to know the guy's a guitar player. So it's a pretty interesting interview. I've watched a little bit of it already. I think you'll get a kick out of it. Imagine if you owned Guitar Center, if you were the CEO of Guitar Center, would that change your amount of practice time? Maybe you'd have less practice time. Anyways, I thought that'd be a cool thing. So I encourage you to, when this live stream is over, to click on that link and check out that interview. Very interesting. Other things to talk about. I got a book back. I'm so happy. I got a book that I had thought I lost. I got it back. I'll tell you more. We'll talk about that. I want to do a follow-up on that thing we did last week, which I labeled Know Your Roots. It had to do with grabbing a G chord in the F formation and a whole bunch of riffs you can do. I want to do a few more of those because I have been doing it with a bunch of my weekly students, and we've been having a lot of fun with it. So I want to keep the ball going with you guys. What else? Ear training intervals. We're going to talk about ear training intervals this week. Famous songs that you already know because you've heard music your whole life. And now we can attach those songs to the theoretical concepts of like a half step. What am I talking about? Okay, name this tune from a famous movie. Right? The theme from Jaws, right? The most famous half step in musical history, if I might be so bold, right? I just played the open E string and then the first fret on the E string, right? So that's what I'm talking about. Now you know the sound of a half step on the guitar, right? If you sing the Jaws theme, that's a half step, right? Okay, so imagine having a whole bunch of songs And for each song, you know, oh, that's an example of blah, blah, blah. It takes a concept that might seem theoretical, like the interval of a fourth or a third or a minor third, and makes it extremely concrete because you relate it to a song that's in your head. So we'll talk about that today as well. You know, every once in a while, I like to throw a philosophical concept at you guys, or something that you can think about as you're tackling something that's new or hard or different. Because we all find ourselves in that situation. At least we all should find ourselves in that situation. When you're practicing something that's a little bit hard, that you're not sure if you can do it. I want to give you a little food for thought when you get to those moments. Yeah, so that's what's on my mind. Hello to Bruce from Sydney, Australia. Hello, Chris in New Jersey. And Scott, hey, David. David is watching as well. Rock Lobster, you just had a birthday. Happy birthday, Rock Lobster, a few days ago. Scott Rhodes has a question. Scott says, yeah. Scott says, I was playing with a fun built-in setting on a multi-effects pedal that makes the guitar sound like an organ. Beautiful. What are some effect settings that you find inspire creativity? Ooh, I love a good tremolo pedal. I don't have my tremolo pedal plugged in, but gives that nice woo, 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 woo kind of sound. You hit a chord and the chord just, it pulses. And maybe that's why I like it. It's you can almost feel the sound coming and going, whoa, whoa, whoa. Of course, this is the one time I don't have my tremolo pedal plugged in. What I like about it is, in my mind, it gives added value to the chord after you strum, right? You hit the chord, and then if you have the tremolo pedal plugged in, it has this kind of a pulse to it. And you can adjust how fast or slow the pulse is going to be. Why I like it so much is it's very atmospheric, right? One humble chord, an E minor chord, and it takes on an extra, and that has some personality, right? Has some life to it. So that's one that I personally like. In terms of inspiring creativity, you know why? It inspires me to let the chord ring, and then add a melody on, like sing a melody on top of it without worrying about changing to the next chord. The chord's doing fine. The chord's bubbling away there, pulsing away. And it inspires me to not change another chord, instead finding some nice melodic stuff to do while that chord is still ringing, right? You songwriters out there, you may find yourself falling into, I don't want to call it a trap, but it kind of feels that way, where you're always changing chords. You're writing a song, and from the very beginning, you think, okay, D, and then I'm going to go to B minor, and then I'm going to go to E, and you have this whole chord sequence, this constant chord changing, and that works. That gets you one type of, that can inspire one type of melody. But I would suggest that hitting one chord, nice humble E minor chord, and singing on top of that for 4 counts, 8 counts, that's a long time. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2, 3. I would suggest that you would come up with a different melody if that was your scenario. So I like the tremolo pedal because it inspires me to listen to the chord I just played and not rush off to another chord. Those are my sirens, not your sirens. You ever hear that? You ever hear a sound and you think, is that coming from the TV, or is that really coming from my neighborhood or whatever? Yeah. So Scott, that's the first one that comes to mind, the tremolo pedal. Of course, a delay pedal is nice in the sense that it repeats the sound back to you. Bam, 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 bam. That's very busy, right? The delay potentially can create a whole bunch of sounds after only one stroke. That can be good in a different way. But yeah, I'm gonna go with tremolo. Scott's saying the tremolo and the delay combined give interesting textures on the baritone guitar. Well, now you're just making us all jealous, man. Pooba John is in the chat. Hello, Pooba John. I can, hold on here. I can see numbers better if I go like that. I like my play button though. Oh, that's better. On my monitor, I can see how many people are watching, and I can see thumbs up and stuff, but I can see it better depending how I turn this. Oh, well, that's on me. All right. David says, other than Crimson and Clover, what tremolo tunes come to mind? That's a good question. Crimson and Clover, what a cool song, right? Crimson and Clover, the original version, David, done by whom? Some of us know it as a Joan Jett. We heard Joan Jett did it, but David, put that in the chat. Who, or anybody who wants to, who did the original version of Crimson and Clover? I think I know who it is. First initial T, second initial J. Yeah, Charlie Beagle. That's who I'm thinking of as well. Yeah, Tommy James. Tommy James and the Shondells. What is a Shondell? I don't know. There's a lot I don't know. Yeah. Bruce says, Bruce has been watching a lot of Bob Dylan and folk guitarists. My sense is that they add little embellishments to almost every open chord for texture. Yeah. Yeah. And Bruce says, is that your approach to playing folk songs? Yeah. Whenever it's appropriate. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I tell this story. I've told this story and I'll tell it again. That when I first became aware that you were allowed to like play a chord, but then lift a finger off of the chord. Oh man. You recognize that little riff? From the movie Midnight Cowboy, John Voight, Dustin Hoffman. Okay, I was trying to strum that song. I was about 2 years into my guitar journey, maybe not even 2 years. And I knew, I could tell that song started on a C chord, and I couldn't figure out what happened after that. But I knew there was this note from the open B string, but like what, I knew I couldn't find the chord. I didn't know what to do next. And literally someone said, just take off your pointer finger. That's all. I mean, and then so that for my personal guitar journey, that was my big eye-opening moment. Oh my gosh, it's a C chord with no index finger, also known as a C major chord. Okay, so ever since that moment, I became aware, wow, you can do stuff with a chord. And sometimes it can be very temporary. Like that's not a temporary thing. That's like literally how the song goes, right? That's a composed chord change from a C major to a C major 7. The song called, yeah, Charlie Beagle, you got it. Charlie, you're 2 for 2 here, Charlie. Go buy a lottery ticket or something. Everybody's Talking. Written by Fred Neil. Very interesting guy, Fred Neil, but made famous by Nilsson. But Fred Neil was the songwriter who wrote that song. Okay, so in that case, anybody who wants to play that song, you have to do this, right? It's not something that you do on a whim. But once you get a taste for that kind of sound, it's fun to do it on any chord. I call it modifying a chord. It's fun to modify any chord, even if the song doesn't demand it. It's nice to know that you're allowed to. I'm going to stick on this C chord, but I'm strumming what I call the inner strings, the second, third, fourth, fifth strings. But I'm doing a little hammer on my middle finger on the 4th string, 2nd fret. Well, now done like that, it sounds like I'm thinking of another composed tune. How about name that one? I'm pretty sure it's capoed at the 4th fret. It could be capoed at the 3rd fret. That a hammer on with any existing finger. That's what I call a finger that's doing what it's supposed to do. In this case, it's a C chord, index, middle ring. Hammering on with an existing finger, lift it off, strum, then hammer down. Oh, what a cool sound. So, yeah, Dave, you got it. Dave and David, Into the Mystic. I would worry about this. I think it might be a capo with the 3rd fret. Yeah. So Van Morrison, I have no reason to think Van Morrison is a particularly sophisticated guitar player. I've never heard him do anything particularly sophisticated on the guitar. And in light of that, I feel comfortable saying this is not a particularly sophisticated move. I can do it. You can do it. But I mean, it's Into the Mystic. It's how the song goes, right? You know, you write a great song on a great album, and you start off with a hammer-on like that, and you make that the identity of the tune. Oh, so cool. So, so how do we get on this topic? Bruce, yeah. Um, Either I became aware how often, well, two things happened. I became aware how often songwriters, guitarists did stuff like this intentionally and made it part of the actual song that you can't live without. Or I simultaneously became aware that you're allowed to do this, whether it's your own tune or, you know, you're playing with somebody and, you know, you're on a C chord and they're in a C chord. You can put in little things, right? Hammer-ons, adding the pinky. I'm staying on my C chord here. Just adding my pinky, second string, third fret. It's right there waiting anyways, at least if you're keeping your pinky from flying off, right? I know plenty of you have a habit that I certainly have tried to, you know, overcome myself, where your pinky flies away, right? Okay, so to keep your pinky hovering over the second skinny string, the B string, then it's pretty easy to put that pinky down on the second string, third fret. Whether it's your own personal song or you're just playing with a friend or whatever, you know, yeah. Once you get a taste for it, you kind of can't go back. So, Bruce, I definitely try to work stuff like that in tastefully. I hope tastefully, right? You know, and you find ways to be subtle, to entertain yourself. The last thing you want to do is be bored, right? And think, oh, all I have to do, quote, quote, all I have to do is strum a C chord. All this song is G and C and D. And you don't want to zone out and you know, think, this song is easy. This song is, you know, I don't have to give 100%. Let's see if you can find ways to work in, or in my case, when I need to be aware, part of my education was listening more closely and being aware, wait a minute, it's not just G, C, and D. There are these little subtle things going on, and, you know, you better pick up on those, right? And if I had to identify a few more classics, anytime you're not using your pinky, find a way to use your pinky, you know, experiment with whatever's available to the pinky, just experiment, you know. And what was the other one? Well, simply moving a finger. I'm sticking with the good old C major here. I'm strumming down, up, but my middle finger is moving from the fourth string, second fret, where it's supposed to be, to the third string, the G string, second fret. So depending how you look at it, I'm just having fun with the C chord, or you could argue for that brief millisecond, I'm playing a new kind of chord. A C major chord with a new note added happens to be the note A, which is the sixth note of a C major scale. Therefore, at that moment, I'm playing a C major sixth chord for that millisecond. And I might do my best to like lean over my ring finger to dampen out the fourth string, because otherwise the fourth string is the open D note, which does not sound so great. Or I could try my best not to strum that open D string. There's a bunch of little workarounds. I would say I have medium-sized hands. So when I reach over my middle finger to get that third string, second fret, if I put my mind to it, I can actually have a little of that skin muting out the fourth string where it just was. I mean, that's some pretty subtle stuff, right? And yet, you know what? I have found as I get, quote, quote, better at the guitar, it's partly due to stuff like that. Like, oh, you know, one tiny scrap of my skin, you know, muting out a string, it solves the problem. But when I hear myself say those words, and when I've had that experience and I realize, oh, well, I'm just barely touching a string to dampen it out intentionally, I realize that is the craziest. How do you teach that to someone? How do you teach them to take I don't even know, a square millimeter of their finger? And, you know, that's pretty subtle stuff. And yet I'm sure people do it all the time intentionally, and they don't think about it really, you know, until maybe someone Maybe they see someone who's not doing it, maybe a student, and they say, oh, well, you might have to let a tiny bit of your skin dampen out the unwanted string. I don't know. It's subtle stuff, right? It's subtle stuff. Oh, well. Bruce, thanks for raising that subject. Lots and lots of, the deeper you go into this stuff, the more you find. And by the same token, that type of subtlety, that type of detail right there, you'd never see that with the naked eye, right? You see someone doing that, you think, oh, okay, and then you try to do it, and it somehow does not sound like them, right? I mean, we've all had that experience. How come it sounds good when they do it? And I thought I was doing the same thing. It's extremely likely there's some little subtlety that you just can't see. You just can't. Either because it's too subtle a movement, it's too fast a movement. Maybe one finger is covered. Well, lots of times when I do a B minor chord, people think I'm doing it as a bar chord because look at my index finger. It looks like I'm doing some kind of bar, right? But I know I'm arching my finger over and I'm putting all my pressure, all my attention on the 5th string, 2nd fret. So there's things where it might look like the guitar player is doing something, but they're not. It's hard. It's hard to learn an instrument visually. I know a lot of people say, well, I'm a visual learner, and that's good. But I mean, we all should be visual learners, right? Here I am, illustrating stuff visually, right? But just don't beat yourself up. If you're looking so intently at the YouTube video or your teacher or whoever, and you're like, well, what? I don't get it. Yeah, it might be too subtle, it might be too hard to see. That's why it's nice to have someone to ask, right? So you can reach out and say, okay, what is that thing you're doing? Okay, checking out the chat here. William Collier says, I'm gradually getting more comfortable with the basic 6-string guitar, learning to play songs. I keep seeing references to alternate tunings. Can you talk a little bit about that? Yeah. Alternate tunings, it's a beautiful concept, but it's a rabbit hole. It really is a rabbit hole. What we're talking about is retuning 1, 2, or even all 6 strings to completely different notes, and then playing material that can only be played in that tuning. And there's a lot of famous songs that require some sort of alternate tuning. As soon as you change any one of the one of the strings, you're officially in an alternate tuning, right? And there's many songs, not the majority. I don't want you guys thinking that, this is anywhere near, I would say, in terms of what I would call popular music, I don't know if I had to put a number on it, maybe 5% of all the great songs you've heard in popular music. I mean, this is a weird number to give, I know. I would say maybe 5% tops involve some sort of alternate tuning. Now, you might love a certain band, and that band might do everything in alternate tuning. That's different. But I'm talking about, I don't know yet. Does anyone turn on the radio anymore? Does anyone just listen to the radio? You turn on the radio and but nevertheless, there's so many famous songs that you just can't get the sound you want to get unless you do the alternate tuning. And there's good and bad. Let's get the bad out of the way. Not everyone is comfortable retuning the guitar. You just learn how to get it in tune, and it's basically staying in tune for you day after day. You don't want to start messing with it. I get that. So it can be tricky. Once you start changing stuff, you might not feel comfortable getting it back. With time, you'll get used to that, but yeah, it's tough. As soon as you start changing any string, the sound of any string, everything you learned potentially goes out the window. I think we talked recently about dropping the 6th string, the fat string, down to D. Extremely common. I would say that's the most common alternate tuning, simply the fat string loosening it down to D. Well, guess what? A G chord isn't a G chord anymore. Any chord that you used to do that included the 6th string, E minor, E, you gotta do something else. You gotta change something. What a pain, right? So those are 2 of the bad things. The fact that you just might not be comfortable retuning your guitar, and secondly, now why did you learn all that other stuff to only have to start over again with some new tuning? What a pain. Okay, now let's talk about all the good stuff. Typically, retuning your guitar to whatever the appropriate tuning is. It makes everything easier. I mean, it makes playing a specific song easier. There's tons of examples of songs that are relatively easy to play. I mean, maybe even surprisingly easy to play as long as you're in the right tuning, you know? And how good is that? That's an awesome thing, you know, that you can now get those sounds you've heard. Rolling Stone songs, a lot of Rolling Stone songs, Keith Richards is in open G tuning. And I know he removes the sixth string before everyone tells me, yeah, I know he very often removes the sixth string. So there's a lot of Rolling Stone songs that are just not going to sound right unless you do that tuning. But once you do that tuning, I mean, I've done a deep dive in this stuff, and holy cow, they're just not that hard, you know? And it sounds just like the Rolling Stones. It's extremely satisfying. It opens up a lot of creative ideas for those of you who are songwriters. Put your guitar in some alternate tuning, and whether you have a book that corresponds with, you know, ideas for such and such a tuning, like different types of chords and stuff, or you're just going to wing it. You're just going to you know, start just as if you're on an island in the middle of nowhere and your guitar is in a different tuning, and you're just going to be wildly creative and come up with your own thing. How cool is that? I mean, it definitely opens up some. One of the, to me, this is fascinating. John Lee Hooker in an open tuning. I was working on a John Lee Hooker song. John Cavallo, are you in the chat? I think it was one of the songs that you and I did, John Lee Hooker tune, in one of our lessons. And John Lee Hooker, let's say it was an open A tuning. I'm pretty sure it was an open A chord, right? So when he strummed his guitar with no fretting whatsoever, it produced a sound of an A major chord. Okay. There was a thing that he kept returning to, John Lee Hooker, that is, that clearly was what we would call a C chord, a C formation. Now, it didn't sound like a C chord because the tuning was different, but I thought, oh, I felt like I was reading his mind. He was thinking, oh, well, what if I take something I already know, like a C chord, and apply it even in this new circumstance? And, you know, he must have liked the way he sounded, because I believe in that song, he jumped around a little bit using that C formation because it sounded kind of interesting. And I thought, wow, I know what he was doing. That's so cool. Like, I felt like I was right there with him. Like, yeah, man. So that's, hey, don't let me stop you. No matter how, you know, you hypothetically retune your guitar, see what it sounds like to play an old-fashioned E major or D major or something. It's totally possible to come up with some very cool things without having to learn new stuff. I mean, there's John Lee Hooker just playing a C chord, but it sounded pretty cool in the new tuning. So lots of creative possibilities. And if you have two guitars, I think that's what you guys are talking about in chat. If you have two guitars, man, that's the way to go. I mean, that's, now you're in a position where you could put one guitar in a different tuning, and leave it there. And for instance, if you were working with a teacher and you want to go down that road, one guitar in your standard tuning, life is good. The second guitar, we'd pick some alternate tuning, and my goal would be to load you up with a handful of things in that tuning. So let's say you're going to practice for 45 minutes. Half the time practicing regular six string, regular conventional tuning, and the other half of the practice session, pick up the second guitar that's already in that tuning and work on a handful of things in that tuning. Boy, if you have a second guitar that's already sitting right there, that really is a game changer. If you decide to buy yourself an extra guitar, why not use the Sweetwater link that I'm about to put? How do you like that, my little segue there? I'm about to put this link in the chat. I don't know, why not? Sure. If you're going to head over to Sweetwater anyways, and those of you who have used the Sweetwater link previously, I thank you in advance, or I thank you for doing that. Okay, so putting this in the chat right here. Okay, there you go. If you're going to shop at Sweetwater anyways, click on that link to get there. And a tiny, tiny portion of their profits they send to support this live stream. Okay, you guys are talking about lots of cool stuff. Okay, DP, I see your question. Hold on one second. Charlie Beagle, I wish I knew that song, but that you're stumping me. Charlie Bigo says, what about the song called Can't Seem to Make You Mine by the Seeds? Is that a tremolo song? I don't know. I don't know. Don is saying a good tremolo tune is In My Room by the Beach Boys. What a pretty tune. That's just a beautiful tune, right? My buddy Clay, who I performed with a few weeks back, he's a big Beach Boys fan, especially on tunes like In My Room, that type of thing, or Surfer Girl. I think Surfer Girl is one of his absolute favorite tunes. Okay, I'm scrolling down here. Yeah, Scott, you're talking about the tremolo that Link Ray uses at the end of Rumble, right? At the end, you start to hear that that weird, which, yeah, I guess that's tremolo. That's just a weird sound. Whatever it is old school, right? 1956, whatever he had available on that amp way back when. But it's obviously Rumble is a beautiful, beautiful thing. A to Z Me is talking about Buckets of Rain. That whole album, the Blood on the Tracks Bob Dylan album, supposedly that's all in open tuning. And I have never done a deep dive on it, but that's what I've heard, that the whole thing is in open tuning. That's the vibe he was in. Caddis is referencing a scene in the Bob Dylan biopic called A Complete Unknown, where Dylan's playing with another guitar player on Pete Seeger's Rainbow Quest TV show, which was a real thing. And Dylan asks him what tuning he's in. Yeah, I remember the scene. I don't remember the dialogue, but I'm sure you're right. I mean, that's you sit down with someone, and if you can figure out that they're not in a standard tuning, or you want to just confirm, especially over time, you get a sense. You hear certain. How do I put this? You get so used to how a regular guitar sounds that you can pick up pretty quickly when something is tuned differently, over time for sure. And you got to just ask, what tuning are you in? Sometimes that's helpful information. Sometimes I suppose it's not. But if someone's in an open G tuning, it's pretty likely, whether it's a famous song or a song that they just wrote, it's pretty likely that they're still relying on the chords that we all consider to be the conventional chords: G, C, D, E minor, right? I mean, those are four extremely good guesses. Imagine, this situation, someone's in an open tuning, like, hey, what's the tuning? They say, oh, I just wrote this song in open G tuning. And presumably, like, they want you to play along with them. You could take some pretty educated guesses that those are the 3 or 4 chords you're going to be playing: G, C, D, or E minor. At least that's a good way for you to begin and see if you can, find out where they are playing those chords, because their hands are not going to look like you expect, right? Hopefully they could just tell you. But yeah, A to Z Me says most of the Blood on the Tracks album is in open D tuning. Take your word for it. That sounds about right. Yeah. Scott is saying the D shape, the D formation, is cool in open G tuning. Plus, you can do about anything on the 5th and 7th frets, and it's going to sound good. The most common alternate tunings, beyond just loosening the fat 6th string down to D like Delta, are open chord tunings, which actually the banjo is typically in. I mean, most of the times you hear someone playing that nice, fast bluegrass banjo, they're in open G tuning. To them, that's normal. To us, that would be like, ooh, an open tuning. It's different, right? Banjo, it's called banjo tuning. Open tuned chords, strings that are tuned to produce a chord with no fingers whatsoever. It's extremely logical, extremely practical. What's not logical or practical is our default conventional tuning, where, as you guys know, if you don't fret anything and just strum the 6 strings, it sounds like nothing, right? Why would somebody tell me? Why would anyone think that's a good idea? Let's take a perfectly good instrument, right, ready to play, and make you have to work immediately to get any sort of harmony out of this instrument, right? It doesn't make sense. The banjo makes a lot of sense. It's user friendly, right? Okay, So when you hear people say open E tuning, open D, open G, open A, those are the four big open chord tunings, D, E, G, and A. That means with no fretting whatsoever, you just bang the strings and it sounds like one of those chords. Like say open G tuning, you bang the strings, it sounds like a G chord with no effort whatsoever. And for those of you who have never been in that situation, I can't tell you how liberating that is, right? You sound good. You can just strum, you sound good. One follow-up approach is, you're strumming a G chord with no hands, right? If you want to strum another chord, you could bar across 6 strings. You could piggyback your middle finger on top of that if you need more more strength, and that's your next chord. I'm in open G tuning, a nice, secure, strong bar at 5, like Scott mentioned. That's a C chord. At 7 is a D chord. So you got G, C, and D. G is no fingers. C is clamping down across everything at the 5th fret. D is clamping across everything at the 7th fret. Okay, now you're up and running. And little elephant in the room is slide guitar. Slide guitar, the best traditional players going back, 100 years, all were in open tuning. There are terrific players out there nowadays who do not retune the guitar. They just play slide guitar in standard tuning, and it's a free country. But there's you pay a price for that, and by playing in open tuning, there's a lot of very cool slide sounds you can get relatively easily because of the open tuning. I'm just reading in the chat here. Yeah. See, you guys are asking such great questions. And I mean, we could do a whole show on open tunings, and maybe we should. What do you think? Should we do that? My only concern is for those of you who are not comfortable, you don't want to mess with your guitar, and would that be entertaining for you to watch, even if you have no intention of going to open tuning? Would you? Let's make it a poll question. Okay, we got dozens of people. Here's the question. Would you watch a live stream in like if we did, or if we really committed to it, an entire live stream in open tuning? Okay, there's the poll question. I mean, I'm down, man. I'm down to clown. I'm down to do it. The reason, you heard, where I'm coming from. I don't want to exclude anybody who says, I don't want to mess with my guitar. I'm happy. I don't need to do anything else. I've got enough challenges on my plate, and I can see someone being curious about it for a few minutes, but then saying, oh man, I'm not going to do that. So, I don't want to exclude anybody, but I can see a lot of you guys are curious, or some of you guys have a lot of experience with it. So that's great. So William, you're saying, William says, how does one go to open G, for example? So you're halfway there already. Obviously, 6 strings on the guitar, you only have to retune 3 of them. The 2 E's both get loosened down to D. Okay? There's only one other string you have to change or loosen. The A string, the 5th string, gets loosened down to G. So the 2 outside strings that are currently E's, those both get loosened down to D, like delta. And the 5th string, the A string, gets loosened down to G, like golf. By the way, now's a good time to mention, you've just taken a little of the stress off the neck of the guitar. The strings will feel a little bit looser, specifically the ones that you just detuned, right? Will feel a little bit looser. And your guitar is going to feel a little bit different, in this particular tuning, this open G tuning. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but your guitar is going to feel a little bit different. There are other tunings that involve tightening a bunch of the strings, and that's going to have you're going to notice that effect as well, right? Kata says, I'd prefer a show about the double drop D. It sounds so beautiful. Yeah. Scott says people with long nails like Dolly Parton use open tunings because they can play their chords with one finger bars, not the fingertips. I know what you're talking about, and Dolly Parton is an impressive human being. I swear I saw her in Johnny Carson with massive long nails on her left hand, and she was still playing conventional chords. And only Dolly Parton can get away with that. I think that's one of her many superpowers. But Scott, I don't doubt what you're saying, that she can that she might play an open tuning and then play a lot of chords with one finger. I think I saw someone mention Joni Mitchell. And I had a pretty good seat when I saw her in concert. It was quite a while ago now. I saw her in concert in the late 90s. But I had a pretty good seat, and I could see her fretting hand. And yeah, man, Joni Mitchell chords, a lot of them are one finger chords, but adding in other notes with these fingers. But really, it was about one finger going up and down the neck quite a bit because of her alternate tunings, and it sounded great. I mean, how many songwriters in the world can you recognize by the chords they're using, not by the voice they're singing, not by the, I don't know, the vibe of the band or whatever? They start strumming the chords, like, oh, that's Joni Mitchell. I would suggest that no other songwriters can you recognize from the chords they're playing, just strumming the chords. Oh my God. Yeah, she owns it, man. She owns it. Okay, let's see. Since we're doing a dive that keeps getting deeper into open tunings, you know how I said there's four, D and E and G and A? D and E, I say G and A. G and A tunings are the same. It's just that the A tuning is tighter. If you simply have an instructional book, and the instructional book is written in open A tuning, or this chapter in a book is open A tuning, but you're an open G tuning, you can still learn all the same material. Your fingers are all going to go in the same place. Relatively speaking, those two tunings are equivalent to each other. And the same goes for D and E. You might have your guitar tuned to an open D chord, Life is Good, and someone gives you some instructional material written for open E tuning, you can still practice it and have a great time with it. If you want to play along with a recording or video or something, and you're in open D tuning, but the video, whoever's in open E, you just capo up at the second fret. So open D and open E are equivalent to each other, and open G and open A are equivalent to each other. And I'm happy to talk more about that, but yeah, Scott Rhodes is talking about Richie Havens with open tunings and his thumb reaching over, right? Yeah. Stephen Stills is another one that comes to mind as a songwriter who definitely writes tunes and open tuning, and his own quirky tunings for that matter. I remember a million years ago, I saw Love the One You're With, Sweet Judy Blue Eyes. I mean, a lot of his famous tunes, you have to be in his quirky tuning if you want to play the exact song. But again, that was another one. When I saw it written out, I thought, oh, physically, it's not that hard to do some of the things Stephen Stills was doing if you're in that tuning. But you can see why creative people would do it, right? I mean, as years go by, and you've written songs with all the common chords, you've written songs with bluesy shuffle patterns, you've covered a lot of ground as a creative musician. You want to, your next album, you're working on your next album, maybe it's time to do an alternate tuning, right? And explore that. I can see why people, it's not like you're tired of the regular chords necessarily, but I can see why a creative person would say, okay, I got to shake things up. Poor piano players, right? There's no equivalent. Given that guitar and piano are the two most common songwriting instruments, right? For popular music, there's not an equivalent for piano players. So aren't we lucky? We're lucky, man. We can just do this. Yeah. DP and Charlie are talking about the DAD-GAD tuning. Yeah, DAD-GAD, another extremely popular tuning. Yeah, Scott's talking about the complete book of alternate tunings by Mark Hanson, Hanson. Now, Scott, I have a book by him, but it's about alternate tunings, but it's little. It's like if you took a sheet of paper and folded it in half that way. It's a little thin. They call it like a case book because it would kind of fit in your guitar case. Is that the book you're talking about, Scott? Because I think that's what it's called, and it's definitely by Mark Hanson. It's got a bunch of good stuff in there for sure, but it's definitely not an encyclopedia. It's yeah. Okay, Scott. So you're talking about maybe his follow-up, 126 pages. Yeah, it's interesting stuff. William, thank you for your super chat. I appreciate that. As a teacher, my instinct is to, once you confirm that someone really wants to go there and be in an alternate tuning for a little while, is to give a student some very, very specific, easy things to play. Say, how do you play G, C, and D in open G tuning? What are some cool bluesy riffs in open G tuning? What are some cool country riffs? Because, it's a little bit disorienting. And my thing is I always want people to have a taste of success, right? If not more than a taste, but you got to get a taste of success. If you're going to wake up the next day and, continue your existence on planet Earth, you want to have, you want to feel like, okay, I got something going on. I got it, and for a week or two, you got some material to practice, right? So my only concern about someone who goes out and say buys a book and then gets into tuning, and I just hope it's a good book, and with knock on wood, some audio and or video examples, because like I said, it's a little bit disorienting, or I worry that it could be disorienting, and someone says, oh man, I don't get this, and I don't know, and then you're kind of like floating in the ocean, and you just want to go back to conventional tuning, and I would hate for anyone to have a negative experience. So Scott says that particular book, it lists songs in each tuning, like famous songs, yeah, plus scales and chords, etc. Yeah, so you must just have the big version of the little one that I have, and yeah, it's very cool. So yeah, so it seems like according to the poll so far, you guys will be up for doing that. So yeah, so what you can do in preparation for the day when we do some or all of our live stream with an open tuning, you want to be very comfortable using your clip-on tuner or your tuner app on your phone, however you typically tune your guitar. You want to be very comfortable using that. I'll tell you one pitfall that could happen. Whatever you're using to tune your guitar, app on your phone, clip-on tuner, whatever you're using, it's possible that it's only calibrated to hear the 6 notes that we all tune to. So that as you loosen your fat string, say E, loosen it down to get to a D, the tuner freaks out and says, whoa, your E is getting out of control. I don't even know what you're doing. And it throws up its arms, and all of a sudden it's not helpful anymore, right? It's possible that some folks might have tuners that are just not prepared for alternate tunings. There's workarounds, including just buying a tuner or a tuner app, whatever, that has a chromatic setting. Sometimes it just shows up as a little C on your screen. You ever click on your clip-on tuner and different letters appear? C, V, B, G, U. You ever do that, right? You click a button, and some of you might not even know you're doing it. Okay. G stands for guitar. That means it's listening to the 6 notes we all tune to. C would be the chromatic setting, where it's listening to any sound, it's ready to respond to any sound you give it. That would be what we wanted, the chromatic setting. I don't know for sure. I don't know how to tell without holding your tuner right there. But everyone, you save the owner's manual, right? When you bought it, you save the little booklet it came with. I know some of the free apps for tuning, they want you to pay to do the fancy stuff like what we're talking about. They give you the free one, but the free one is what it does is very limited. Those other letters that pop up if you click through on your tuner, if they do pop up at all. V would stand for violin, U for ukulele, B for bass guitar. Because in general, those tuners are marketed to everybody. They want to sell that same tuner. Oh, B could be for banjo, I suppose. I think it's usually for bass. Scott says, I'm too chicken to try different tunings on the 12 string. Tuning is challenging enough as it is. Yes, yeah, I get that. Jamie says, D'Addario has a tuner for $30 that does alternate tunings. Yeah, beautiful. I mean, it's just a computer chip in there, right? But I'm not surprised it's $30. As you guys know, I'm sure out there online, you can find tuners for less than $10. But the less you pay, the less you get, right? I'm sure. But all this stuff keeps getting cheaper in general. So I like the D'Addario company, and I'm sure they do have a product that does this. So anyways, what you can do to prepare for that is to see what your tuner can do, and however you tune your guitar. Some of you might tune it to a piano that's nearby or a keyboard. And just so you know, you don't need any tuner whatsoever. Let's say you have the tuner, you tune your guitar perfectly to a conventional tuning, right? Life is good. But now the tuner's in the other room. Well, to loosen I'll do it right now for you guys, to loosen the fat string down to D, I'm going to use my existing D string as a reference. Now, at the moment, I'm pretty confident that that's pretty darn close. I mean, you have that D right there as a reference. See what I did there? And my fat string is now 1 octave lower. I'm going to do the same thing with my skinny E string. I'm going to use my D string as a reference. That's the 4th string. I'm going to loosen my skinny E. And again, that's pretty close. I have my tuner down there. I can check in a minute, but I know I'm in the ballpark. So remember, I said you only have to retune 3 strings. I just did 2 of them, no tuner. I just used my existing D string as a reference, right? I'm about to loosen my 5th string, the A string, down to G, while I have my G string as a reference. No jokes. So as you change, adjust strings, the instrument is reacting to that a little bit. There's no guarantee that the strings I didn't touch, there's no guarantee that those are still in tune. I'm just saying, be ready for anything. If you think of your guitar as a living instrument, then that explains a lot. That explains why, I don't know why it's out of tune. It's just been sitting under my bed for a week, or I don't know why it's out of tune. I just put it in the car and walked into my lesson. Yeah, but it's a living thing. It's, so ready for the big reveal? Let's see if I'm in the ballpark. What I'm about to do should basically sound like a harmonious G chord. I'm going to start in the skinny string. Not bad. And for the fun of it, I'm going to compare it to the actual, using my little Peterson tuner down there. And what I can tell you is that getting comfortable with this notion is worth it, if for no other reason than most instruments do not have this option. You take a minute or two, and you essentially give yourself a whole new instrument. Oh, it's a beautiful thing. Saxophone players wish they could do this, right? Trombone, xylophone, electric wazoo. None of them can do this. Banjo players do this. Banjo players retune. Fiddle players, violinists. I'm aware that that's an option for violinists at times, certain folk styles. Okay, now that is even closer. Okay. So That's a G chord. Someone says, play me a G chord. There's my thumb. My bar clamping down at 5. There's a C chord. D at 7. C at 5. G at 0. And I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg, you know, but just to give you a flavor for that. Now, one of my personal favorites, Ry Cooder, said, I don't know why people don't always learn in open tuning, because with one finger you can get all those chords. And I thought, ooh, I know why, calling me. Because I don't know how many people Ry Cooder has taught in his life. I'm sure he's given a few lessons, but I can tell you, after teaching this is my 33rd year, I think April Fool's Day is actually my anniversary, right around the beginning of April, will be 33 years of teaching. People walking in their first guitar lesson, they don't have the strength to clamp down on one string, on one fret and go all the way across, even with the middle finger piggybacking. They don't have strength to do that. I mean, they can develop it, but you can develop anything, right? You can also develop the ability to just play conventional chords, right? So in my humble opinion, I would say that's exactly why guitar teachers don't teach in an open tuning. And at this point, so much famous guitar music has been written in conventional tuning, the vast majority of it, that playing in open tuning is cool, but it doesn't lead you directly to playing a whole lot of guitar music that you know and love. It helps with some things, but again, you know, there's the vast majority of all the guitar music you've heard in your life was done in standard tuning. So imagine taking a bunch of lessons in open tuning, but as soon as you ask about Wish You Were Here, you know, your teacher's like, no, that's in a different tuning. Sweet Home Alabama, Stairway to Heaven, different tuning. You know, it's tricky. It's tricky. So Watcher Dan says, I love Ry Cooder. You know, I there have been many times when I've like read a Ry Cooder interview in a magazine, and I get so jazzed up, man, because he's so passionate, and he gets you like caught up in whatever he's talking about. You're like, yeah, man, I want to go listen to that Hawaiian music right now too, man. That he just made that sound like the most fascinating thing in the world, and there've been many times that he's inspired me in many ways. But I get such a big kick out of any, you know, back when there were guitar magazines. I don't know how many there are anymore, but I would get a kick out of that. Okay, Charlie, I see your question. You guys are bringing up lots of great stuff. Watcher is watching in North Carolina. Watcher Dan, thanks for watching. Watcher Dan says, open tuning is scary for me, but also fascinated me. Yeah, it's scary, right? It's like you're in the deep end of the pool. Like, whoa. Yeah, A to Z Me is reminding us that if your alternate tuning involves tightening the strings, for instance, the open E tuning, open E and open A involve tightening quite a few strings, you could break a string. I mean, it happens, you know. So be warned, be warned. But then again, why do open A tuning anyways? Just do open G tuning. And if it's extremely important for you to get the sound of open A tuning, just put a capo at the second fret. Same thing with open D compared to open E. You know, there's no pressing reason to go into the tunings that involve tightening the strings unless there's some specific song that you have to learn, and just putting on a capo somehow doesn't solve the issue. I wouldn't recommend it. I'd recommend open G and open D, not A or E. You know, what's the rush? What's the rush? Yeah, Static Zigzag is saying what we're all thinking. He says, Static Zigzag says, this is where the need for multiple guitars happens. One in standard and another in open G or whatever. So when you see rock stars on stage, I remember someone said, I went to see Neil Young doing like an acoustic tour, just Neil Young, no other musicians. And there's like a semicircle of many instruments behind him. And I'm sure some of them were in very specific tuning, so you could just grab it and go on with the show, as opposed to grabbing a guitar, tuning it, hoping it stays in tune for the performance, blah, 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 right? I know it's tempting to say, oh, rock stars, they just want to look like a rock star, so you have 10 guitars behind them. Well, they also want to make the show go smoothly, and they want to play their famous songs that are written in those tunings, right? So that's great. I think it's why not, man? You're the only one on stage. There's no band to bond with. You want a little backup, right? You want your friends with you. You want your 6 guitars. Why not? I'll never forget, ma'am. I believe the gentleman's name was John Deutsch. John Deutsch from Chicago. I'm pretty sure I have his last name right. I went to see him play at Buddy Guy's Club, Buddy Guy's Legends in Chicago. And he had a handful of guitars behind him. And being young and dumb, I thought, what a joker. Why does he have 4 guitars behind him? Come on, man, just play your songs. Well, don't you know, John Deutsch would grab a different guitar for each song, and each guitar sounded fantastic for that song. And I just sat there feeling dumber and dumber and dumber, thinking like, yeah, now I see why he brought those guitars. Why not, man? He knew a lot more than I did. He knew what he wanted, and he knew the songs he was going to play. And yeah, so little lesson for Jonathan back in the day. I was a kid. I was just a kid. Some of you might know Buddy Guy I think he's even on tour now. In January, he does a residency at his own club in Chicago. And I think we talked about this a few months ago in our live stream, and different opening acts, but Buddy Guy himself is always the headliner. And if you happen to be in Chicago in January, that's the place to be. Okay, so one of my goals at the immediate level is to demystify stuff. So did I just demystify the open G tuning a little bit? You guys feel like, you get the concept of it? From fat to skinny, my strings are now D like delta, G golf, D delta again, G golf again, B bravo, and D delta again. D, G, D, G, B, D. I loosen the 2 outside strings from E down to D, and I loosened the 5th string that wasn't A down to G. Opens up a lot of possibilities. Now I want to go get my book full of open G stuff and start playing a bunch of groovy tunes. One thing I can tell you, let me see if I have this. Is this what I want to do? No. My little brain's working. Yeah, Watcher Dana saying, what about when folks tune to the same note on all strings? And that's a Stephen Stills thing. I want to say it's Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, where Stephen Stills, like, the whole guitar is E's. I think the 5th string is a B or something, but it's just different high and low E's or something like that. Yeah, I mean, but I get it. For, creative people, they want to come up with new sounds. Realistically, a songwriter who wants to write songs for a mass audience, you want the world to like your songs, right? You're trying to make a living doing this. The melody that you sing is probably going to be a relatively conventional melody, right? You want people to remember it and sing along. You're not trying to make it into some free jazz kind of chaos. Not that free jazz is chaos, but that's the popular perception, right? Okay, nothing against free jazz. If you're going to be singing a conventional melody, the background chords are going to be conventional chords. And by that, I mean chords with majors and minors and, maybe a suspended chord, maybe a 7th chord, but you're going to be harmonizing your conventional melody. I mean, conventional in a good way with conventional chords. But what if you're tired of conventional chords? You're tired of writing songs with D, G, A, all that kind of stuff. That's where the open tunings can come in. So you're shaking things up, or at least it's the illusion that you're shaking things up and you're inspiring new ideas. But if someone were to write down the names of the chords you're playing, it's possible, I would say very possible, that in the grand scheme of things, you're still playing chords with names like G major, A major, maybe with little extra notes added in. But you're giving your own creativity a break from the conventional chords. And the way the chords are ringing and jangling, you are inspiring maybe melodic things you wouldn't have thought of otherwise. And yeah, like Watcher Dan is saying, now Joni Mitchell is she her chords really, in my opinion, really are in a class of their own. Her chords do not end up just being G, D, and E minor. They really are their own jazzy things, Now, banjo players would laugh at this whole conversation because, like I said, typical banjo is in open G tuning, and they think of it as that's their default tuning, right? Yeah. By the way, if you want to fake it for a minute, in case you didn't pick up on this, I did not retune my second, third, or fourth strings. So my second string is still a B like Bravo, third is still a G like Golf, fourth is still a D like Delta. Those didn't change, right? So you can imitate open G tuning just by focusing on the second, third, and fourth strings. Okay, so I'll show you what I was just doing, but I mean, that's, the second, third, and fourth open strings are a G chord. A G major chord is 3 notes, G, B, and D. And guess what? We got the open G, the open B, and the open D. There you go. So it gives you a taste of open G tuning. Just then, I'm taking my thumb, index, and middle. This is kind of a good time to use your bare fingers, just so you don't have to worry about being too precise with your pick. So I got my thumb, index, and middle, and I'm just planting them on the fourth, third, and second strings. Okay, so they're just, each one has its own personal string right there, right? So there's my G chord. When I want to change to something else, I'm going to play a C chord, but I'm doing like a lazy C chord. I'm only doing 2 of the notes of a C chord. Because remember, I'm not even plucking the 5th or 6th strings with my right hand. So I'm doing 2/3 of a C chord. Although technically that is enough for a C chord, those 3 strings. I'm still plucking 3 strings. I'm grabbing 2 of them. In my mind, I know that's part of a C chord. If I do that C chord grip up 2 more frets, it's pretty darn close to a D, delta, D chord. Not exactly, because we have the open G string still ring, but it's a cool sound. Kind of cool to slide from that C up 2 frets and back again. See my pinky? Nothing wrong with having a finger rest or 2 fingers rest on the guitar, as long as you're not pressing hard, right? Nothing wrong with curling them up either and getting them out of the way. I just thought I'd bring it to your attention, because if you keep your eyes open, you will see people with 1 finger down, 2 fingers down, no fingers down, right? Even whether they're playing with a pick or finger picking, it's kind of an interesting thing. There's no, should I say this? There's no right or wrong necessarily. One thing that we all would agree would be wrong, though, is if any finger is pressing hard into the guitar, that, you don't want any kind of stress. Okay. Another thing I did was, in this sort of starter open G tuning, I clamped down at 5 for a C chord and at 7 for a D. But notice I'm not doing that thing I was doing before across all 6 strings, because again, I'm using bare fingers. I'm only focusing on the 4th, 3rd, and 2nd strings. So there's a 1-finger C chord and a 1-finger D chord. Ooh, at the 3rd fret, a B flat chord. How cool is that, right? 1 finger B flat chord, 3rd fret. I was just going G, G, B flat C. It sounds a little bit like Green Onions, but Green Onions is in a different key. But okay, just some ideas there, right? I can see the chat is going quiet. And what I'm hoping is it's because you guys are doing that. I love it. Yeah, keep doing it. You don't have to say anything in the chat. Keep doing it. I love those moments when the chat goes quiet. Okay, I'm going to wet my whistle. You guys, you're making my day here. I was a little bit disappointed in myself because I didn't have it together to do this week's sing along, play along. Like I said at the beginning of the show, I had a tune in mind, and we will get to it someday. But as I was writing it out for you guys, it got more complicated than I wanted. Not difficult to play, but just I was going to have to draw diagrams with arrows and tell you, oh, the second time do this, and the third time do this, and I got stressed. I thought, you know what? That's not why we're here. We're not here to be stressed, right? They call it playing music. By the way, any of you who may speak languages beyond the English language, I'm curious what other languages call playing music, right? I believe in French, jouer is also playing music, right? Jouer. So I'm hoping that globally, the verb playing music, to play music, I'm hoping that it's always a nice word like playing. I hope so. So any of you who speak other languages, help me out here. I knock on wood. I hope no one calls it working, right? I got to work the guitar, got to work the saxophone. What song is that? Work the saxophone. It's a great tune. Somebody put that in the chat. And I play just what I feel. Drink Scotch whiskey all night long. Die by. What song am I singing here? It's the only time I've ever heard someone say, "Gotta work the instrument, gotta work the saxophone," which actually very cool lyric writing. Scott is saying in German, it also translates as to play. Woohoo! I heard about an African language where the word for singing and dancing was the same word. I mean, how cool is that, right? Language is where it's at, man. It's where it's at. The 2 best things you can do for your brain: learning a musical instrument, learning a foreign language. 2 best things. Oh, so speaking of foreign, a little segue. When you are tackling something you haven't done before, and it's not easy, right? And you find yourself somewhat frustrated. This is the little philosophical thing I referred to earlier. Ask yourself, is the thing that you're tackling, is it truly hard, or is it just foreign? Is it just new? I would suggest that a lot of times it's the newness of it that is the problem. It's not that it's physically hard. Now, believe me, I know some of you are saying, no, wait, I'm doing something right now that is physically hard. I get it. But I think there are a lot of occasions where you might feel an equal level of frustration, for lack of a better word. And it's just that the thing is foreign. It's new. You never had to do that thing before. You don't have a name for it. It doesn't relate to some other chord, So in those moments, I hope that little question might keep you from getting too super frustrated when you analyze it a little more deeply and realize this thing is not physically challenging. I just have never put my fingers in this position, or I never had to slide like this before, whatever the case might be. I think it's valuable to differentiate between those 2 things. We all get frustrated. In fact, if you're not frustrated, you're doing something wrong, right? You want to be working on something that pushes you, right? You want to a little bit, I figure it's good to have a balanced diet. You want to have your stuff that's sort of your comfort foods, right? You can't go wrong. You know how it's going to taste, and you know how good you're going to feel eating it. You got to try new stuff, right? Take a chance, man. Take a chance. So just before you get before you beat yourself up too much, maybe remind yourself, hey, this thing is not going to be physically hard necessarily. I just have to get used to it, you know? How about a weird chord you never played? And now you have to hustle from, say, a nice familiar A minor to some weird chord. But the chord itself might not be hard. You just never did that thing before. Okay, another thing I wanted to throw you away. Couple quick things. Earlier I mentioned I got a book back. I taught a young guy. I just relocated back to Connecticut, and I taught a young guy for a few years, and he entered high school and had a busy life, and so he didn't continue lessons with me. I had every reason to think he was still playing the guitar, but we didn't do lessons anymore. And I still haven't seen him personally in years. And he and I were doing lessons in 2003, 4, 5, 6, 7, you know. And his mom came in with a bag of books that he didn't need anymore, didn't want anymore. Maybe he had decided not to play the guitar anymore. He could, for all I know, he's in college. He's not a young guy anymore, not young. And a bunch of the books were books that he had purchased, you know. But one of the books was a book I thought I had lost. I must have loaned him this book. For the record, Your Honor, I'm holding up The Complete Robert Johnson by Woody Mann. And I opened up, and like, this is a book I bought for myself, and had loaned it to him, which I don't usually do. That's why I couldn't find it. I thought, well, I don't loan books very often. Because I mean, it's so easy just to make a photocopy or something. And so I'm opening up this book. I mean, I knew it was mine because I mean, I know my books, man. You guys know I'm a book nerd. And I see my own writing in here, like notes, like, because I was working on these songs, right? And little notes I'd written to myself, including, oh man, there was a tune that I made a note that I'd been working on. I often, when I'm working on a piece, I don't know if you guys do this, I put the date on there. I guess I have this fantasy that I'm going to get really good at it, and I can look back and say, oh, that took me a month to get good at it, whatever. This one song, August 19th of 96. I was working on one of the tunes in this book. So anyways, I can't believe I got it back. I'm so happy. So I'd share that with you. Okay. Other things. Let's talk about ear training with familiar songs and familiar intervals. I am going to pull this up, and I think I can do this without. I'm going to put this link in the chat, everybody, but I want to show you one example. Okay, check this out. Share. Remember earlier I said, hey, the theme music for Jaws is a half step, and if you can, you know, hum Jaws, then you can hum a half step. Okay, so I'm going to scroll up here. This is a website called musicnotes.com, and this is titled The Basics of Music Intervals. Train your ear with these easy songs. So the challenge is, can you recognize or possibly even sing a specific interval? An interval means the distance between two notes, you know, starting on one note, singing one note, and then singing any other note. Can you do that with no assistance whatsoever? So check out, I'm going to pause here. Happy birthday. Okay. Where's my guitar here? Happy birthday. Okay, so happy birthday, right? Happy birthday is an example of a major second. What's written there when I'm playing is a C note to a D note, back to C note. I'm just going to play those first 3 notes. Happy birthday. So now you know what the interval of a whole step sounds like. La, la, la. All those years you've been singing happy birthday. You've been singing a whole step, at least in the beginning. Happy birthday, right? A whole step, also known as 2 half steps. Well, check it out. Greensleeves is 1 half step past that. It's known as a minor third. Greensleeves, also known as What Child Is This? The Christmas version of Greensleeves. What child is this? So you get where this is coming from? Now, don't worry. You don't have to memorize all this stuff. You don't have to. I just thought I'd show this to you because if you're like me, and I know I am, I have a lot of songs in my head. And all those songs in your head. It's not screen sharing. I see it on my end. Give it a minute. Give it a minute. It'll pop up. It'll pop up. Wait for it. Don't worry. You're not missing anything drastic yet. But it's going to show up in a minute. I don't know why sometimes it doesn't do it. Yeah. Hey, Ethan. Ethan, welcome. I know you, Ethan. Nice to see you in the chat. So all those tunes you have in your head, you have a head start. You have a head start on identifying intervals. Now, believe me, I know that there's a handful of you out there who say, I just want to play the guitar. I just want to rock out. And that's great. No, nothing wrong with that. But some of you, you're curious about the theoretical side of things, the technical side of things, the names of stuff. You might hear people say, oh, that's a perfect fourth, that's a minor third, whatever. What are they talking about? Well, one way to comfort yourself is they're talking about stuff that's already in your head. Hey Jude. In Hey Jude, those of you who are looking on the screen right now, is identified. And again, this is not about memorizing stuff. You don't have to memorize it, but I just want to point out, when you sing Hey Jude, you're singing you're singing a minor third descending. Hey Jude, right? So my sales pitch, and I'm going to put a link to this website in the description of this video, is if you're so inclined, I'm going to scroll a little bit more. If you're so inclined, you can start to get a handle on all this stuff. And you can go as deep as you want to. But I saw this page. I thought this would be a good start. There's Amazing Grace. Every melody, The Simpsons, every melody you've ever heard. Remember, a song is a melody, right? By definition, if it's a song, it's because there's a melody, whether it's a saxophone, a singer, someone's presenting a melody. Every melody you've heard is simply a series of intervals. Happy Birthday starts with two half steps or a whole step, a major second, right? It's all just a series of intervals. Here's The Simpsons, The Simpsons, an example of a tritone, right? Very interesting stuff. Okay, so I'm gonna leave it at that. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Oh, you know why violinists always play Twinkle, Twinkle like for their very first song? It's because the violin is tuned to a perfect fifth. When you play one violin string, no fingers whatsoever, just the open string, and then you go to the next skinnier string, twinkle, twinkle, you're off to the races. You're already playing the first notes of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. That's why I assume, I'm pretty sure, that's why violin teachers teach Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star as one of the very first things people are ever going to learn on the violin, because it's easy. Why is it easy? Because the interval is a fifth and violin strings are tuned in fifths. So, okay, that's all. So I thought you might get a kick out of that. And again, I will put a link to that website in the description of this video. Okay, how about another one? Another thing that I came across this week. I mentioned this earlier. Yes, Static Zigzag says, are you back in standard tuning? I am. My little tuner called the Peterson Strobo Stomp HD tuner. Is it a little more than could I have got a $30 D'Addario tuner? I could have, but it's so fun having it as a pedal. It was just a little more expensive than $30. But when I turn it on, it cuts out the guitar sound so I can tune quietly even while I'm talking to you guys. And I am back in standard tuning now, yeah. And then when I click it again, my volume comes back. Kind of fun. So. The Guitar Center CEO, relatively new on the job, and a podcast that I like to listen to, the podcaster said, the guy's off to a bad start, had some critiques of some of the guy's business moves or philosophical ideas. And the Guitar Center CEO, I guess, caught wind of that and went on the podcast to talk about where he's coming from. So I thought you guys might get a kick out of it. And again, I'm going to put a link to this in the chat as well. It's about 35 minutes, give or take, 36, 37 minutes. So many of you have been in Guitar Center before, right? And you may have a love-hate relationship with Guitar Center. You might take it or leave it. You might have no opinions whatsoever. Guitar Center is an easy target because there's 300 of them. There used to be more. There's 300 of them around the country, and they make for many people that's the only guitar store in your area. But a lot of people have strong opinions about Guitar Center, and so it's a chance for you to see who the new CEO is and maybe get a taste of where he's coming from. I thought you guys might get a kick out of that. So, and the podcaster who's interviewing him is a guy who I personally think is an interesting guy to listen to, Philip McKnight, and his podcast is called Know Your Gear, all about guitar gear. It's a fun podcast. And it's on Fridays, so you don't have to miss mine to watch his. So I'll put a link to that in the description of this video. So I'm looking at the poll, and it seems like a lot of you guys would be happy to do a live stream, where we focus on open tuning. So awesome. Okay, I'll add that to the agenda. I love it. 82% of you are giving a thumbs up to a live stream in open tuning. Love it. Love it. So everybody go buy a second guitar using the affiliate link, and we'll do it. If I had to predict, I would predict that the live stream would for sure be in open G tuning, G like golf. And depending on how my little brain works, maybe from open G. Well, no, we would do open G. Maybe we'd start with drop D tuning, where you loosen the fat string down to D. We'd start with that one. Then we'd go into open G tuning. And then if my little brain can come up with a good lesson plan, we'd probably do open D tuning after that, D as in Delta. Rick G says, I live in Los Angeles, but the best guitar center I visited was in New Orleans. The best guitar center was in New Orleans. Yeah, they're all different, right? We have one, a stone's throw, maybe not a stone's throw. I could get to my local guitar center in about 25 minutes down the highway, give or take. Don't go there much. It is what it is. I guess my feeling about Guitar Center is they don't have the things that I'm looking for. They have plenty of guitars, and they have, I guess the prices are okay, and strings and picks and all that kind of stuff. But they just don't have the stuff that I'm looking for. I've been so spoiled over the years that I stick my head in Guitar Center once in a while and just see what's there, and it's the new stuff. It's whatever the new stuff is. I would love it if Guitar Center had a ton of used stuff. They have some, but it's not too much. But anyways, you guys, I think you'll get a kick. Yes, Charlie, Philip McKnight is who I'm talking about. You got it. All right, let me see. Okay. All right, I think I have one more piece of wisdom to share with you. Not even piece of wisdom. I just think things during the week, and I make a little note. I think I'm going to share with people on Saturday. A little thought crosses my mind, So for those of you who are just tuning in, typically by now we would have wrapped up our play along song of the week, and we're not doing it this week, but it'll be back. I love doing it. I just couldn't make it happen in a perfect way this week, and so I thought, I don't want to do anything halfway with you guys. I want things to come out perfect. So today's live stream, we might wrap up a little bit early. Don't forget though, if you have a question, put the question in the chat. Put a bunch of question marks in advance, and we can talk about everything. How about if we do one more thing? Although don't be shy, feel free to ask a question. How about if we do that thing where we talk about that follow-up to last week's Know Your Roots. And if you weren't here last week, don't worry. I'll get you caught up very fast. We need that, and we need this. And I'm going to share the screen again. If your screen goes black, don't worry about a thing. Okay, there's that. That's what I'm looking for. Okay. Static Zigzag says, what time do you start on Saturday? I start at 5 p.m. Eastern time. So right now it's 6:30 Eastern. And we typically go from 5 to 7. And we've done 86, and this is number 87. And unless there's something goes wrong with the Wi-Fi or something crazy like that, we typically go for 2 hours. Every once in a while, I take a week off. My son was doing a big conference swim meet a little while back, and I took that Saturday off, and he did great, and it was great to see him. He's been home for spring break, and we got to bring him back to college tomorrow. We can't keep him home. But knock on wood, what do you think, Music Fan? Music Fan, are we going to have a special dinner tonight? Let me know. Keep me in the loop. Let me know what I need to pick up on the way home. I'm hungry. I'm ready for anything. So let me know what I can do. Music Fan is our moderator tonight. Music Fan, her name is in blue. She keeps me informed, such as when the screen sharing doesn't work and other things. Yeah. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do the Know Your Roots follow-up to last week. I see. Ooh, it looks like all right. Looks like if I'm reading the emojis right, looks like Chinese food is the plan for tonight, which is awesome. Okay. If your screen goes black, do not fear. Give it a minute. Give it a minute. Why a screen goes black when I start screen sharing, I have no idea. But hopefully in a moment or two, your screen will show a lesson plan that we started last week called Know Your Roots, number 1. Okay. So the premise here, very simple premise. If you know the names of notes up and down your first skinny E string, it opens up a lot of opportunities. Winston from Wales. Yeah, see you next time, Winston. It's super late over there in Wales, I know. Don't worry. Don't worry. You can watch this later, right? Thank you for being here, Winston. So once you find your root note, in this case, the root note is going to be G. Why did I choose G for the root note here? Because G is such a common chord. It's like, if you got to pick one, why not G, right? If you know that the 3rd fret on the first skinny string is the note G, a whole lot of beautiful lead guitar fills, riffs are waiting for you right in that vicinity. That's why this is called Know Your Roots. If the band is playing a G chord, then the note G is the root note at that moment, right? Okay, so the first thing I want you to do, and we'll get into the new stuff in a minute. This is going to be a little bit of a review for some of you. Grab the G chord that's waiting for you there at the 3rd and 4th frets. I might make this a little bit bigger. Whoa, see, look how big that is. Whoa, man. I did enlarge that. It's not your eyes freaking out. I should do that. I should make it bigger and smaller and just see if anyone notices and not say anything. That'd be not, that would not be very, that'd be a cruel trick. Okay. It's a G chord that feels like an F chord, but only on the 3 skinny strings. And if you can play that chord, no problem. That's great. If you can't get those 3 notes to sound perfect, don't worry about it. Because for the most part, we're not going to be playing that chord. We're going to be visualizing that chord. We're going to be using the image of that chord as our reference point. So, but if you can get those 3 strings to sound good, that's great. The diagram in the very top center is there to help you, but also the very, very first thing in the tab, that stack of numbers, 3, 3, 4. That's just another representation of this chord. Okay, so everything, I'm going to make this smaller now. Everything on this lesson plan, which is available to members of my website, it's in the PDF section. All of those things are just cool key of G riffs. When is a likely time for you to use this kind of stuff? I will tell you. The singer stops singing for a few beats, but the band is on a G chord, and somebody has to put something in, right? So hypothetically, The singer is singing, right? And then the singer stops singing and you go, and the singer starts singing again, right? A little fill. The singer's singing, then they stop and you go. You're going to have so many opportunities to play little fills like that. Sadly, you won't have as many opportunities to play big epic guitar solos, but relatively speaking, you have a million more opportunities to put in cool little things, right? And again, I chose this world of G because G is such a common chord. Okay, so I know we did a handful of these last time. I want to focus on a couple that I don't think we did, and even if we might have, I really want to, it's worth another look. Hold on here, there we go, that's what we're looking for. Okay, see where my cursor is, number 10. There's a slide from 7 down to 5 on the first string, and then 3. See the one my cursor, I'm doing a little circle around that. Okay, such a pretty sound. It's gonna sound like this. And I'm ending back on that G note, because again, that's our reference point, right? I'm taking my ring finger, I'm sliding from 7 on the first string down to 5. One pluck of my pick, and then 3 on the first string. I'm doing the exact same thing on the second string. Ring finger 7, sliding down to 5. Index on the second string, 3rd fret. And then bring the whole thing back home to the note G. First string, 3rd fret. So again, the scenario, the song saying the key of G, the singer singing "Life is Good," the melody pauses for a moment on a G chord, and you put a nice little fill in there. Oh, it's so pretty, right? It's so pretty. How about number? I'm going to scroll a little bit. How about number 12? I'm going to scroll up just a tiny bit. See where the number is? I'm moving my cursor around. There's number 12. Number 12 is going to sound like this. Little bluesy sounding, thanks to that 6 on the first string, that B flat note. Okay, there we go. 6 on the first string. I'm doing a little slide. See that little slide up to 5? People always ask a great question. Well, where do you start the slide? And if there's just that slash symbol leading to the number, like there's that little diagonal slash leading to the 5, you can begin the slide wherever you want. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you slide fast, quickly. So realistically, you don't want to begin the slide from too far away, since the whole point is to get to that 5 fast. If it was really important to begin the slide at a certain fret, they would tell you that. It would be like a 3, and then that slash, and then the 5, you know? Okay, so nice little bluesy sound. By the way, number 13 is kind of related. Notice in just about every example, the final note is the G note, 3 on the first skinny string, because we're keeping things centered. You know, it's your root note. The scenario here is the band is on a G, and you're doing something that sounds nice when the band is playing a G chord. By the way, those of you who do home recording, there you go, man. Write a song that needs fills in the key of G, right? Just, you know, I would suggest writing a song with G, C, D, and E minor chords, G, C, D, E minor, and make sure you create a scenario where the singing stops on a G chord. That's a very conventional thing to do in this context, and leave your room, you know, leave room for a fill. And you could either think of it as a cute little melodic. I say cute, I don't mean cute. I mean, you know, small and appropriate and melodic, a little thing. This fills in the space, or it could literally be the signature riff of the tune. You know, I mean, any one of these I would humbly submit. Could be a nice little introduction. The doom, boom, 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 and then the song starts, right? You know, and then when it comes back later in the tune, it's the signature riff. It's a familiar sound. I don't own any of these. I just kind of made these up off the top of my head, and they are yours to enjoy. You can change the timing. You can do whatever you want with them. Hope you do. Yeah, again, the chat, it has gone very quiet. Oh, that makes me so happy. Because what I would guess is that you guys are checking out some of these riffs, right? Hey, in case you're not 100% clear, all of these are 14 totally separate things. You're welcome to link them together, but I wrote them to be totally separate from each other. See that double bar line? Every one of these riffs are separated by two thin measure lines, bar lines. When you see those two thin lines like that, that's what that is telling you, is that these are all separate riffs. It's not one big long song. Having said that, I highly encourage you to make a big long song out of them. I mean, create a scenario where you're going to stay on a G chord for 8 counts, right? Or you can, using a looper or just recording yourself on the phone, give yourself some nice G chords. G, 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 G. Get that going, and then you could be like, you could begin linking these together and having fun doing it whatever you want. Now, some of you might say, well, wait a minute. All of this is fine, but it's this very specific example. The band has to be on a G chord for any of these to work. And there's some truth to that. But I'm glad you brought that up, because you could transpose these to any key. Take anything on this page, or don't forget, there's that first page. I'm going to zip back to that first page. Move any of these up 2 frets. And now you're doing things that reflect an A chord. Well, there you go. I mean, move it up and move any of these up 5 frets, and you're reflecting a C chord. So to me, that's like the ultimate, not just getting good at a handful of these and enjoying them and having fun with them, but can you take the whole riff and move it up X number of frets? Of course you can, because now you truly have something that's useful. Then it doesn't matter what the chord is, because you've got a handful of these riffs that you can apply that sound good with any chord. You just have to know, you have to know your roots. I can't believe I set myself up that way. Oh my God, I didn't even plan that. You have to know your roots. If the band is on a B flat chord, well, you would have to know that 6 on the first string is a note B flat. So instead of that first riff being, it would be, that when I say the first riff, I mean that 3-3 double stop with that slide. That sounds fine doing a G chord, but if you want to sound good doing a B flat chord, 6th fret. In fact, that coincidentally happens to be exactly what Chuck Berry does when he goes, Johnny Be Good. Someday I'm going to nail that, someday. So yeah, know your roots. Okay, so this PDF, this 2-page PDF that you're looking at, is available to members of my website, www.song-bike.com. You can head over there and see a ton of PDFs. If you're curious, the PDF for the play along song that I was gonna do tonight, and I just couldn't make it happen the way I wanted. The PDF for that is also on my website. So you can get a little preview, because we will do that song, so maybe next week. I just have to find a good way to summarize it for you guys. But for website members, I made it a nice, I took time to make it 3 pages long. When we do our play alongs here on the live stream, I like a 1-page document, so we can all be looking at this 1 page, right? And I don't want you guys to, I want to put it out there and then we all play it, Anyways, if you're curious, tease. If you remember my website, song-bike.com, go to the PDF section, scroll all the way to the bottom, and and you'll see, hey, Beginner Guitar Lessons is our other moderator. He's in the chat. Beginner Guitar Lessons says, can you show us the intro to Run, Rudolph, Run? I know the tune. I don't know the intro. I'm guessing that's a classic Chuck Berry intro, though, right? Hey, Randy, thank you for your super chat. Super chats are one way you can support what's going on here at the live stream. It's that $ down at the bottom. Don't forget other ways you can support what we're doing. You can become a member of my website. You can use that Sweetwater affiliate link to purchase something for yourself from Sweetwater. You can, I got merch for sale, t-shirts, hats, all that kind of stuff. At my website, I also have a bunch of learning materials that you can download instantly. Cost a few bucks, but it's good stuff. Oh, don't forget, I got my show and tell here. I have something that is free. I have given away just about 400 of these. That makes me so happy. So if you want something for free, and who doesn't want something for free, head over to my website, song-bike.com, and get yourself a free download of the SongBike Blues Guide. And there's a YouTube video that goes with that. It's free. So True S Armor says, where does the name SongBike come from? You know, as a kid, I love songs and I love my bike. There you go. You know, I wanted a name that was kind of interesting. And so I thought, SongBike, I don't know. Also, I wanted to have a name that was musical enough that I wasn't committing to only presenting guitar information. I play other instruments too. So that was SongBike. That could include drum lessons, that could include banjo, that could include some other stuff, So yeah, I spent a lot of time on my bike as a kid. Anybody else here deliver newspapers? 5 afternoons a week. Man, that's how I got my record, my money to buy LP records, man. Delivering newspapers 5 afternoons and Saturday mornings delivering newspapers. Yeah, I spent a lot of time on my bike, which was whatever bike my brother had outgrown. So I got that bike. I don't think I didn't have too many new bikes. No complaints, man. I wanted his old bike. It was always better than whatever I was, wearing out. And I always had a little music going on in my head. Raj, a little song going on in my head all the time. Hey, Scott has his SongBike t-shirt. Excellent, Scott. Young high schooler who took lessons from me. Her parents are graphic designers. And so her dad designed the SongBike logo. And the rest is history. Static Zigzag. Oh, you're asking a great question. Oh man, you're opening a can of worms. Static Zigzag says, what was the first record you bought? Ooh, yeah, boy. Well, I would get records for Christmas. So I'd have to think about the first records I bought with my own money. I remember a couple of things. I remember the ones that stand out. I don't remember. I would buy 45 RPM records too. But there's a few ones I remember being very intentional. My brother had the Beatles album that I refer to as the Blue Album. It's the greatest hits from the later part of their career, 67 to 70. I just call it the Blue Album. I don't know what you call it. But he didn't have the Red Album, which is the Beatles hits from 62 to 66. So I remember very intentionally carrying a whole lot of change and of crumpled up dollar bills and getting the Beatles Red Album. That was a, pretty significant purchase very early in my life. I also remember the big kids in my neighborhood talking about the Billy Joel album, The Stranger, in the mid 70s, slightly, 77. And I remember them saying, I remember this like it was yesterday, how The Stranger was a great album. Man, went down to that department store, more coins and crumpled up dollar bills, got myself a copy of The Stranger. Oh, yeah. The other albums that I got as a kid that I think were Christmas presents, the Star Wars soundtrack. Ooh, good stuff, man. Big LP. I think it's a double LP record, the Star Wars soundtrack. And still a personal favorite of mine, the Rocky soundtrack. Not just because of that big fanfare, which is great. It's Rocky, right? It's very, invigorating. But that whole soundtrack is such a hip soundtrack. I listened to that just a week or two ago. I still listen to the soundtrack of Rocky. I love that music so much. Let's see. Rock Lobster says Van Halen was your first album. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, man. Scott Rhodes' first album was a K-Tel compilation. Hey, you know what? You got a lot of good songs in one disc. Even if you only love half the songs, hey, that's better than a lot of albums where you only like one or two songs, right? Those are the days, man. Those are the days. You buy a whole album and you just have this faith. Like, I hope I like more than the one song that I know. And if you end up liking 3 or 4 of the songs, it was a miracle. It's such a beautiful thing. If you end up liking the whole album, oh man, that was a good day, man. That was a good day. Good times, good times. All right, you guys. So I'm gonna stop sharing the screen here. Just so you know, I'm going to be doing this more and more where I'm going to make the PDF available to you guys so you don't have to do screenshots or scribble stuff down on a pencil or whatever. I'll make the PDFs available. You got to be a member of my website, but it's cheap. It's worth it. And you get access to a whole bunch of PDFs, not just the one that we happen to be working on today, you know. Ethan says Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young was his first album. Oh man, Scott Rhodes says for a 12th birthday, parents bought him 3 Beach Boys albums and Meet the Beatles. Oh man, less than $1? No. For full albums? For less than $1? Wow. I don't know. Beginning Guitar Lessons says Rumors by Fleetwood Mac was my first record. You know, beginning guitar lessons, depending on your family situation, you get exposed to different stuff. Like I remember my brother bringing home Rumors and bringing home certain albums. So, you know, hey, it saved me a lot of money. And all that stuff sounded good. You know, the stuff from the, I don't know, mid 70s. So yeah, so some of us are lucky enough to have the music just enter our home. And then other things, you know, if you're the elder sibling, then you might be the one. You might be the one who's going out and finding this stuff, and then your younger siblings hopefully benefit. Beginning Guitar Lessons says my brother brought home all the Beatles. Yeah, Jethro Tull, a lot of Jethro Tull in my childhood that my brother was into. A lot of Jethro Tull. True S. Armour says, I don't even remember what my first album was. Yeah, I bet you remember a handful of early ones though, right? So funny, kids nowadays, they have so much music available to them for free, one song at a time, which is, I mean, that's great. As long as people can hear music, it's all good, right? But, oh man, what a great feeling that you got your bucks, you got a ride to the record store. Maybe you had something specific in mind. Maybe you weren't sure what was going to happen. I don't know, man. But like, you bring it home. Oh, good times, good times. You know, putting on a cassette tape, taping it so you can listen to it in the car, right? I mean, you had to work for this stuff. It didn't just show up in your feed. You know, you got hear about something word of mouth like that. Yep. Scott Rhodes says, my first 45, the Unicorn Song by the Irish Rovers. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Static Zigzag. Yeah. Led Zeppelin, the Beatles, Neil Diamond, a lot of Neil Diamond. Out there. Yeah. And True is saying an album had like a trajectory, like it had there's a lot going on. You had to flip it over, you know, hear the other side, right? You know, I'm sure in general, lots of thought went into the pacing of the album. What's the first song? What's the second song? You know, where you're going to put the hit song. You ever notice how on a lot of older records, the big famous hit song was not even on side A, right? Sometimes it was like halfway through side B. Like, what? I don't know. Did they not know it was going to be a hit song? I don't know. Beginning Guitar Lessons, first 45 was Phil Collins' Can't Hurry Love. Yeah. Suzanne Vega, right? Early 80s. I can remember a high school friend saying, oh, you should check out Suzanne Vega. Man, I never heard of her. I'll check it out. Give me the cassette. I'll check it out. Good times, good times. And I'm hoping that some of the music that you listen to stuck with you, just like some of the music did with me, meaning that you still listen to it now and it still works for you. Because I know realistically, the percentage-wise, not all of it is going to be quite as enjoyable in the same way as it was then. That's just life, right? Especially if you listen to a lot of music. But um, I hope for you the same thing that I experienced, which is some of that stuff. Yeah, man, you'll stand by it. You're glad you listened to it then, and you're happy to listen to it now. And you know, True S Armor says, "What do you think of the death of bands? People don't know anybody, so they don't play together." Yeah, I I definitely don't know what's trending. Well, no, I'm not in a position to say, "Oh yeah, nobody plays in bands anymore." I can tell you what I see. A local high school here where I live has a rock band class. Basically, I think it's even for credit. It's not just some after school thing. I think it's during school, and the kids get a grade and credit. And one of my guitar students is in the class and really likes it. And it sounds like they're doing a very cool variety of tunes. And I don't know the guy running it, but it sounds like he's putting his heart into it and doing a good job. And my student is very enthusiastic about it. And I could ask him, but it sounds like it's just a good vibe. Like everyone is happy to be there, So that makes me happy that people are still getting together and playing. In this particular case, it's specifically organized by the school during school hours. Like, oh my God, it can't get any easier than that. It's like it's right there, and they have equipment for the kids to use right there. Just imagine. Actually, Ethan, it's at Morgan High School over in Clinton. Although I don't want to underestimate what's going on at Old Saybrook, but the one I'm thinking of is in Clinton. Imagine if every school offered that. Now they offer band. Nothing wrong with band. Band is great. Not everybody's in a position to play a band instrument if they've already committed to the guitar. I have known people like that though, who they play guitar or they play drums. They play a let's call it a rock instrument, but then they also play trumpet in the band. That's great. Not everybody's in a position to do that. So here's a note I'll let you ponder. We'll end on this note. I have this fantasy. You guys know about the origins of Little League Baseball here in the United States? My understanding is that Little League Baseball began with one guy who thought these kids, what they really need is someone to organize them. And we're back. And we're back. Yeah, we're back. I didn't go anywhere. It's all right. I know. I was just about to tell you this thing. Okay, now I'll get back to the story. So my understanding is that Little League Baseball here in the United States was started by one guy who saw these kids who just needed someone to organize their teams, and then they could play baseball, right? And the rest is history. They turn into Little League Baseball, right? Which is a part of our culture. It's an accepted thing that people do, right? Imagine the band equivalent to Little League Baseball. It almost could work as a I mean it could happen. It could happen. Organize people into bands. You could have competitions like games, really be more like, showcases. It wouldn't be a competition directly, but I mean, you can have uniforms and practices and games and tournaments, but it'd be everything like Little League Baseball is. It would just be 5-person bands instead of 10 or 12 or 14 young baseball players. Anyways, this is what I think about when I lay awake at night. The band equivalent of Little League Baseball, and just be a normal thing. Like people just take it for granted. Oh, what are you doing this summer? Oh, I'm doing band. I'm doing blah, 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 Now I'm aware things exist for typical concert bands, trumpets, saxophones, flutes, all that stuff, which is great. I'm a product of that public school band system. I wouldn't be who I was today without who I am today without the public school band system. It's a beautiful thing. What I'm picturing, though, is opportunities for people who don't play the traditional band instruments, the guitar, drums, bass, singing, keyboards. You know what I'm talking about, right? So imagine if there was the equivalent of Little League Baseball for that type of pursuit. It'd be mind-blowing. It would, oh my God, imagine every town, however many Little League teams they have, imagine having that many bands. You got 6 teams, you got 6 bands. Practice all week. You got a little showcase Friday night. End of the season, you do a big thing. Oh man, unbelievable. Watcher Dan says George Thorogood started his band to buy baseball uniforms. Is that for real? For like a I don't know, like a softball team, a men's baseball team, something like that? That's awesome. That's awesome. I don't know. So anyways, let's end on that note. Little League rock bands. That's right, William. Yeah. Why not? I mean, now I don't expect this to happen, but it's easy for me to picture that. Now you have to have the parents have to be the coaches, right? Right. So we'd have to be in a culture where parents know enough about music that they could be a coach. And we're not there yet, right? You know, everybody knows about baseball. Everyone thinks they can coach baseball, for example, right? You know, and you get all sorts of mixed. Let me tell you, volunteer coaches are a mixed bag, my friends. But the culture would have to have a certain level of parents who can step up and direct a band, right? So they'd have to, you know, it would take multiple generations to get to this point. I don't know. Little League was started by one guy. All right, someone out there. Unsung Hero says, we have a local music store that does a rock band league. There you go. They have a battle of the bands a couple times a year with coaches and everything. Dude, there you go. All right. Right. See that? What Unsung Hero said. There you go. So what I'm talking about is that concept, right? That concept as widespread and acceptable and normalized as Little League Baseball, for example, you know? I don't know. All right, you guys, thank you for being here. Don't forget, we're changing our clocks tomorrow morning, right? We're losing an hour. Next Saturday, the Ides of March, right? March 15th, the Ides of March. There you go. Thank you for being here, beginning guitar lessons. Thank you for being here, music fan, our other moderator. I want to say a few good nights. Ethan, thank you for being here. Watcher Dan, Unsung Hero, William, Static, True, S. Rock Lobster, thank you for being here. Scott Rhodes, Kindness for Critters, thank you for being here. Winston, I think, there you go. Winston, thank you for being here. Winston says, the first single, Love Me Do by the Beatles. Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. All right, you guys, Six String Greg, thank you for being here. You guys, I'll see you next Saturday. I hope you have a great week. Take care of yourselves. Play your guitars, try to find those little moments to play those guitars. And let's do this again next Saturday. All right, you guys, have a great night. Have a great week. I'll see you next time.